Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Today, as you doubtless heard during immigration talks, President Trump said something that almost every single person in America actually agrees with. An awful lot of immigrants come to this country from other places that aren't very nice. Those places are dangerous, they're dirty, they're corrupt, and they're poor. And that's the main reason those immigrants are trying to come here, and you would too if you live there. President Trump asked why America doesn't receive more immigrants from places you might want to visit on vacation. Why aren't we getting more people from Norway, he said, which by almost any measure, including the UN's measures, is the most developed and richest country in the world. Well, saying this, Trump used an expletive, and that's not surprising either, since he uses them all the time and was speaking privately. And yet, for some reason, virtually everyone in Washington, New York, and L.A. considered this a major, major event. Why is that? To find out, we're joined by Jose Parra. He was Latino Communications Director for Barack Obama's 2012 campaign, and he joins us in the studio. Jose, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So I think it's, I mean, of course you can have a debate over what countries we ought to admit immigrants from, and I think we're kind of having that debate. But what bothers me about the explosion this afternoon is the dishonesty in it. And I'll just give you one example. Joan Walsh over on CNN, an analyst over there, was asked just a minute ago, would you rather live in Haiti or Norway? And she said with a straight face, I can't say. Now, that's lying. If we've gotten to the point where we all have to pretend that every country is exactly as nice as every other country, then we're being dishonest.
No, it's basically they're talking about, I think the outrage here is about the insult and the expletive that is attached to the people who come from these countries and who are making a life here in the United States, contributing fully to the U.S. right now. They were talking specifically about El Salvador and Haiti, two countries where TPS was recently revoked by the Trump administration.
Right.
And between these countries, we're talking about the people from those countries. They're contributing close to $170 billion in GDP.
No, look, but I'm not. I mean,
and they're making a full contribution.
Well,
to the
I
economy
mean,
of
it's
this
actually
country
pretty.
and the culture of this
It's a complicated picture. But I agree with you. If you're saying that a lot of people who come from those countries are good people, of course I completely agree. But the idea that you're not allowed to say that they're pretty crummy countries, Haiti, for example, or El Salvador, I've been in both of them. That's why people are leaving them to come here. So I don't understand what the sin is. You're not allowed to point out that other countries aren't as good places to live as America? Like, what is the problem?
There is definitely an issue here because basically what's happening here is that the president is connecting and articulating the same vision that we saw in Charlottesville. When they're talking about we won't replace you, what the chanters and the marchers were talking about this time, it's the same thing. And it's
not the same thing.
Look, and it's the same.
Slow down.
What happened to the whole masses that on the Statue of Liberty that we're talking about?
Try and track with me here, okay? The president, from what we know, and maybe he said other things we don't know about, but what we know, he said these countries are crummy places, okay? They're holes or whatever. He used profanity. But the people who left those countries, some of them rode trains all the way through Mexico or hid in a wheel well of a plane to leave. They would agree with that. So why the outrage? Is it you have to lie and pretend, as Joan Walsh does, that, I don't know, I'd live in Norway or Haiti? Like, we've gotten to a place where nobody can be honest about anything. Do you see the point?
Well, first of all, one of the things is that do we apply the same metric to Eastern Europe? We're talking about countries that are not doing too well right now in crime measures and economic measures and other issues.
But we
seem to be applying this only to countries where there are brown people, such as Haiti and El Salvador.
Let's be totally
And we're talking about Norway, like you said yesterday, which again ties back to this social reengineering that they're trying to.
I don't want to get all fact-based on you, but Norway is, according to the United Nations. Well, here are some. The United Nations says that Norway is the most developed country in the world. Its sovereign wealth fund, I think, is the biggest in the world because of the oil discoveries offshore there. As you know, it's the richest place in the world, okay? Haiti is the poorest place in the hemisphere and has been for a long time. People are actually staying in this country right now legally because Haiti is so bad, we don't think they should have to return. So if you say Norway is a better place to live, and Haiti's kind of a hole. Anyone who's been to those countries or has lived in them would agree. But we're jumping up and down. Oh, you can't say that. Why can't you say that?
Well, let me tell you something. Most people in Norway, according to most polls, do not want to live under Trump's America right now.
That's fine. You're kind of missing the point, because the overwhelming.
It's a question about values. Okay. You know, you are attaching this label to people who come from predominantly brown countries, and that is a problem.
I don't know why.
And that is how decisions on TPS are being made.
Okay. No,
you know, when you take away legal status, because these people were here legally.
Okay, hold on. Can I just ask you again? Let me try to ask you a reasonable
from people
question.
who are contributing, to this country, then you know, are you using the statute or are you using prejudice to make the
Jose,
decisions?
Right. Prejudice, racism, white supremacy, fine. But let's get back to it. So
Norway, Haiti, I mean...
One is the richest country in the world. The other is one of the poorest countries in the world. You think it's immoral to point that out. It's a statement of values. I'm asking you a very simple question. If Haiti isn't such a bad place, why don't we say to the people who are here temporarily in refuge from Haiti, go back, it's great. We don't say that because it's not great. Actually, it's everything the president said it was. It's not an attack on Haitians. It's an acknowledgement that their country is not as nice as other countries. And if you can't even say that out loud without being called a racist by people like you and the morons over on MSNBC,
oh, you're
then
just calling me a moron.
I'm not calling you a moron. I'm saying anybody who says that's a racist statement should explain how it is. And you can't. You said it's like Charlottesville. How is it like Charlottesville?
Look, we're talking about a predominantly white country, and we're talking about a predominantly African country or people of African descent. And the president...
So you're not allowed to say that because of it? How about crime measures, income, corruption? I mean, like, what are you talking about?
The president just said a few weeks ago that everybody in Haiti has AIDS, and that's one of the reasons why he wanted to cancel TPS, even though these people are here and they've been vetted, time and time again.
I mean, look,
no, you do know.
No,
you know, so
I'm addressing
when you're
the thing that
attaching,
we know that he
when you're
said for
attaching
sure.
all these labels to an entire population of people, that is problematic, especially coming from the leader of the free world.
Look, I'm going to speak for myself here when I say, again, I think there are plenty of great people from Haiti, and a lot of people who leave from Haiti do well. I've met a ton of Haitians.
Okay.
There are a lot in Miami, and a lot of them have done well. But the truth is that when people from poor countries, not a measure of their moral stature, but when you come from a poor country, you are likely, much more likely to be poor when you're here. And there's a lot of poverty already here, in case you haven't driven across the country. And so there's a real question about how much more we want to import.
I come from a working-class family, by the way, so I do know.
Then you can't look at me and say that's racist. So, for example, I have the numbers on where our immigrants come from. Last year, we had 23,000 immigrants from El Salvador. I'm sure all great people. We had 404 from Norway. So we overwhelmingly give advantage to very poor countries. And it's an honest question, not a racial one. What effect does that have on the poverty rate in this country?
I can tell you that, well, this is a free market network, and I would imagine that you follow the basic laws of economics. When you have people creating demand, and when you have people paying into the tax system, like this 23,000 people from the 23,000 number that you just mentioned.
From El Salvador.
From El Salvador, or the 200,000 who have TPS and the status was just revoked by the administration last week, you are taking that contribution away from the economy. And these people are going to Walmart, they're buying gas, they're buying clothes,
Let me ask you
they're
this,
going
then.
to supermarkets,
so let's take a look
and they are stimulating local and national economy.
So you're speaking in generalizations. And again, I actually admire
the president also is speaking in generalizations.
Okay, here's some specifics. These are the rates of welfare use by country. These are families that are using at least one welfare program in the United States. From Central and South American immigrants, it's 73%.
Can you tell me where that comes from?
This is from CIS, Center for Immigration Studies, the people who keep the numbers on this. And then from South Asia, a non-white region, it's 17%.
By the way, it's CIS coming from the Tanto Network. Right?
I'm not saying that people from South Asia are better than from Central America. I'm just saying there's an economic cost in bringing people over who are more likely to go on public services and who are poorer. That's not a racial attack. It's an economic observation in a country that has a ton of poor people already. And you have no answer for that other than, oh, it's Charlottesville.
Well, you're talking about social reengineering, the whole worry here. And that's why they want to do away with family-based migration. Because family-based migration, it's what they consider is leading to the browning of America, and that's the whole issue here.
No, that is your fever dream. I'm throwing some actual economic statistics at you that you can't answer, and you're getting back to the black, brown, white thing. And I'm asking
I just gave you numbers on the GDP impact from people from El Salvador and from people from Haiti right now.
If people from poor countries are much more likely to go on welfare and make less. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but it means the cost of having them here is higher than people from other regions. That's reality.
I've seen other studies that actually say that immigrants are no more likely to go on welfare than
I would be fascinated to see that study because it doesn't exist. The rate
it does exist.
No, it doesn't. The rate of American families on using at least one welfare program is 30%. Now, that's higher than immigrants from South Asia, for example. You're absolutely right. But the preponderance of our immigrants, aren't coming from South Asia. They're coming from Latin America. And those rates are really high. And I think we have a right to ask questions about that. But you say it's racist.
I can tell you something. Have you heard of the 5-year bar?
I don't know what the
Well,
five-year
the five-year bar is a law that Congress passed that doesn't allow an immigrant, once they regularize their status, to access welfare. So I would like to know, how is it that you're coming up with those numbers
Does it
when law
them?
Right now prevents people from using welfare?
Right, yeah.
Unless you're, of course, factoring things such as when you get a scholarship, when you get a scholarship or public education, and public education is actually an investment into the country. Yeah. So if you're considering that, if that's what you're factoring in,
let me just
welfare,
ask you a question.
That's really problematic.
Right. Okay. So. About half of all immigrants.
And you can look up the five-year bar in the Library of Congress.
But let me just speak to the reality rather than the law. The
law is reality, by the way.
Actually, the law is not reality.
Yes,
and if the law was reality, we wouldn't be having this debate right now.
I could tell you right now, because I know a lot of people who are not able to access Medicare because of the five-year bar.
About half of all immigrants from El Salvador right now are living at or near the poverty line. Again, doesn't mean they're bad people. It's not an attack on them. But that's not true for immigrants from other regions of the world. Again, why is it immoral for Americans to make the calculation? What makes us more prosperous and what makes us less prosperous?
Most of the people who are going to be living near the poverty line are usually because they're undocumented and they are not able to participate in the full-time economy. The people who have been regularized through a program like TPS, there's studies by construction associations around the country how they have moved to supervisory roles. They're well trained and they're producing jobs for other people. And they are generating, contributing.
There are plenty of immigrants who are well educated and well trained.
Right now, DACA students are contributing $280 billion to the GDP of the country.
You don't actually know a lot about these numbers, and you're just
yes, I do.
From some talk show.
Oh yes, I.
But let me ask you a theoretical question then, so we don't get into
where it comes from?
Of fake numbers.
Cato Institute.
Right,
Cato Institute and Forbes magazine, which I'm sure you consider that a leftist publication.
Right. Okay, let's get to a philosophical question. Do you think it's fair for American citizens who live here to decide who comes on the basis of who will potentially help our country more?
In 1965, we changed the laws in this country to be closer to family-based migration because we were using quotas. We were using quotas.
We're using quotas now.
8 to 1. Dreamers to stay in the country. So if you're asking about how many Americans are looking for, most support DACA and to regularize the status of dreamers.
If you can't answer a question, it is counterproductive just to filibuster. Is it, do you think, at least theoretically allowed for Americans to say, hold on, let me finish. Let's figure out who's most likely to add to our economy, who's most likely to assimilate. Do you think it's okay, or is that racist like everything else that I brought up? Is that okay to ask that question, or is it racist?
Immigrants do assimilate. As a matter of fact, I can tell you.
Is it fair for Americans to ask that question? What's good for us? Are we allowed to ask that question, or is that racist?
Who is we when you say Americans? Because right now, 86. Well, I don't know. You have to tell me who you define as Americans. Who are asking
How about
that
the majority of the electorate?
Well, I can tell you that 86. The latest poll that came out today says that 80% of Americans want dreamers to assimilate, including 2/3 of Republicans.
So I'm sorry. We're arguing apples and oranges.
No, we're not. We're arguing about immigrants.
Does a country have a right to decide who comes in and who doesn't come in?
Most Americans wanted immigration reform in 2013 by every poll.
Because you can't.
By every poll, and you guys tanked it in the House of Representatives. So it's not like you guys want to fix the system.
I think our viewers can determine where you're coming from. Jose, thank you.
Thank you for your time.